developing a challenge to Lesnar in 2005 for a pay-per-view match that, quote, he believed was just waiting to happen, Lesnar versus Batista. Could we see it at WrestleMania 29? Could we see Lesnar versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 29 as they try to promote the streak again? I think definitely if Lesnar and The Undertaker gave us this one match at WrestleMania, and that was the only time The Undertaker wrestled in 2013, it definitely would be match of the year, because it seems like a trend has developed in The Undertaker's career. He wrestles once a year, and that one match is match of the year. But, you know, it's really interesting seeing how Lesnar is back now. I'm really looking forward to his explanation as to why he's back. Obviously, it's going to have something to do with John Cena. By the summer, I see some kind of tag team work involving 4 crucial individuals. If Punk is still champion, he doesn't even need to be champion necessarily. One of the other 3 could be champion by then. But I see by the summer a program with 4 crucial individuals: CM Punk, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, and The Rock. I see a lot of tag team work coming from Cena and The Rock. Possibly seeing them as tag team champions is something I can see happening now. And then feuding in a tag match with CM Punk and Lesnar teaming up. I see Lesnar and Punk versus Cena and Rock by SummerSlam. Definitely. Because that's what it seems like they're building up towards. Something involving those 4 crucial individuals. 4 of the biggest names in WWE, 4 of the biggest draws. Call them what you want. They'll be involved in some kind of tag team program, if not by SummerSlam, mid-November for Survivor Series. So there's a lot of stuff that could happen. You know, my scenarios probably won't be the accurate ones, but usually my scenarios aren't far off. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. Just coming out of WrestleMania, of course, they're worn down a little bit from WrestleMania. Lesnar coming back, though, definitely gives them the momentum they need, because Lesnar was huge. In 2003, 2004, he was all anyone really ever talked about, and he's still being talked about a lot. He doesn't even need to wrestle or do some kind of celebrity appearance. Lesnar is talked about. UFC, WWE, if he alternates between the two, whatever he does, he's still talked about. Fans remember Brock Lesnar for the individual he was, and rightfully so. I myself remember Brock Lesnar for his size, his incredible presence, the ability he exemplified inside of the ring, perseverance, dominance. The ability to succeed was something that Lesnar definitely got across. He didn't need to do anything special, and his promo work wasn't anything special. Some of his best promo work came at the hands of Paul Heyman, who referred to him in his first few months as the next big thing. And within 4 months, Lesnar became one of the fastest rising stars in the WWE. He was the John Cena of the early 2000s, in my opinion. I think that Lesnar, he wasn't good on the mic. He wasn't very smart, but Lesnar's dominance is what got him through the WWE, and that's what will get him through without Paul Heyman, without assistance with promo work. His dominance and the ability to get over with fans. Lesnar's reason as to why he came back, I have no idea why. The only legitimate and actual real life reason as to why Lesnar is back could be because of the injury he suffered from the UFC, having his career in the UFC end sooner than he wanted it to end. I think that if he didn't have an injury, we would have never seen Lesnar back in the WWE. And that's an interesting question for our Facebook fans, our Twitter followers, and the people viewing our YouTube channel. Use our social media buttons and our RSS news feed to keep updated with this. Why is Lesnar back is one part of the question, and the second part of the question I'm throwing out to our fans on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where we are streaming the show, is, do you think that if it hadn't been for this UFC injury Lesnar had early in his career after having the title for a number of months and becoming such a huge success, wasn't the best in the UFC, but he was a success, regardless of how you want to look at Lesnar. Do you think if it hadn't been for the injury, Lesnar would have never returned to the WWE? Only for the injury, is that why he's back? And that's the question I'm asking our Facebook fans, our Twitter followers, and the people viewing our YouTube channel. When I was writing columns for different websites, I still do it all the time, but when I was writing columns for websites like globalwrestling.it for a reference, I found it really hard making a transition from covering wrestling for over a decade and then making this transition from covering wrestling into the UFC, because it was like understanding a completely different world that was kind of Jewish or Japanese to you, because you really didn't understand anything about the UFC. You knew it was real, and it was a full contact sport, so it was really difficult for me keeping up with the UFC. I did it somehow. I was one of the very fortunate few to make that transition successfully from just talking about wrestling for over a decade into talking about wrestling and the UFC conjunctionally. And I found it really difficult to keep up with the UFC because of my lack of knowledge towards it. I'm not afraid to admit I have a lack of knowledge when it comes to the UFC, although I'm able to sit down and write a column about the UFC and what happens from week to week in the UFC. Don't watch it all the time. Never have made a habit of doing it. I'm not going to make a habit of doing it because I'm loyal to professional wrestling and entertainment. I have been for over 10 years. I'm not going to change my approach in any way. I like the method that I have chosen to go with over the last 10 years. And because of the lack of understanding when it came to something like professional fighting, I didn't really make a habit of watching the UFC, so I kind of fell behind on Lesnar's career. And if it hadn't been for the fans who clued me in on what was going on with Lesnar, people who used to call me, people who used to contribute things to the website via email, personal friends I've had through my entire life, I probably wouldn't know anything about Lesnar up until now. The only thing I would know is that Lesnar was back. It was very difficult for me making that transition, so I kind of fell behind on what had happened to Lesnar. The only thing I knew about Lesnar was that he had just disappeared from the WWE entirely after this awful match at WrestleMania 20 that fans called boring. Those were some of the chants that were thrown at Lesnar and Goldberg. And then they used the internet as an open forum to complain about how they were treated. Linda McMahon was somebody who didn't take any sympathy towards someone like Goldberg, especially for the way he was treated. But they used the internet as an open forum to express their hatred towards WWE, that be it the reason for the 90-day no-compete clause for any other company. I probably wouldn't know anything about Brock Lesnar, so I do thank the fans, I do thank my friends for kind of filling me in on what was going on with Brock Lesnar. But the thing is, no matter if you watch wrestling or you watch the UFC, even if you didn't, you still knew who Brock Lesnar was. He was the Hulk Hogan of the new generation, I think. Because no matter if you watched wrestling or you didn't in the 80s, you knew who Hulk Hogan was. You knew who The Undertaker was. There were probably 5 or 6 guys you knew of, and knew of all your life. Lesnar was the guy of the new generation of talent that you knew of all your life. And, it surprised me that so many fans knew that Lesnar's career had ended and he was going back to the WWE. Even fans who had never watched WWE once in their life knew Lesnar was going back because of Lesnar's popularity. And the popularity of Lesnar is what Lesnar's going to survive off of. That's what will allow Lesnar's career to continue for the next half of a decade. For the next 5 or 10 years, you will see Lesnar in the WWE, and if not the WWE, TNA. And if not TNA, God forbid, Ring of Honor. Lesnar's back now, and I think Lesnar's going to remain back because he's going to be treated better than he initially was when he came in for his inaugural run in the WWE. A guy of Lesnar's size, a guy of Lesnar's intimidating presence, didn't need to be in the ring in his first match against Rob Van Dam. The type of guy that Brock Lesnar needed to feud with coming in initially would have been The Undertaker, a feud that was put off for a couple of months until Lesnar had enough build and had enough hype as the next big thing. And The Undertaker, quote, despite losing to Lesnar, you can take this quote and do what you want with it for professional wrestling news websites, The Undertaker owned Brock Lesnar and carried his ass for the majority of the program because The Undertaker's what sold it. The Undertaker's who sold all the programs he's been involved in the last number of years, with the exception of a few, Triple H and Shawn Michaels, to name a couple. I put a couple of people on the spot who actually made feuds with The Undertaker work. The thing that got Lesnar over, was people like The Undertaker, because they knew what to do with somebody like Lesnar inside of the ring. So if Lesnar is to credit anybody for his success, it should be people like Mark Calloway. It should be people like John Cena. But it's going to be interesting. It's a decade since we have seen Lesnar perform. inside of the ring. I know a lot of people are talking about it on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. You're watching Brock Lesnar's return on YouTube on your little flash player. You probably watched it a million times by now. YouTube has probably crashed in your region, in your area, because you have watched it so much. The video of it is on our Twitter page at HEW Entertainment Jonathan Clarke 1. So make sure you check that out. It's a really cool video. It's about 3 or 4 minutes in length, long enough for you to see Cena get F5 by Brock Lesnar. Check it out on our Twitter page at HEW Entertainment Jonathan Clarke 1. And while you drop by our Twitter page and are on there checking out over 1,000 tweets and over 1,700 people that we're following, follow us by clicking follow in the top of the website there. It's interesting that Lesnar is back. It's going to be fun to see where we go from here. In the words of Michael Cole, the complexion of the WWE has changed drastically, and the question I have for our Facebook fans, our YouTube listeners, YouTube land at youtube.com, Jonathan Clarke 22, and the people following us on Facebook who have joined our conversation, over 1,100 of you, thank you for your contributions, is do you think Lesnar is going to succeed now in his second run with the company? Something that he turned down earlier, a couple of years back on WWE.com. Look for it in their updated archives. You'll find it very interesting. The amount of hatred Lesnar had for the WWE didn't go away after he left. He probably still has a lot of hatred for the McMahon family. And the reason why Lesnar is back is something that only he knows, and something that fans are only speculating on now. So it's going to be really interesting to see where we go from here with this whole the pain has returned gimmick WWE are trying to put over. You have seen the face-to-face photos WWE.com have posted, not only on their official website, but on their Twitter and their Facebook pages, and their YouTube channel. I mean, that video of Lesnar has been downloaded 1 million times in the span of a week. It's only been, 6 days since Lesnar's comeback, so it's a comeback story not as big as Rocky Balboa or The Rock by any means, but it's a comeback story that WWE.com and its archives in their entirety will look back at 10 years from now. I don't think you'll be reading the column that I wrote about Brock Lesnar returning to the WWE for the first time in almost a decade 10 years from now, when I'm probably dead. But you'll remember this day. You'll remember April 2nd, 2012 as the day the pain returned to the WWE. We are speculating right now on what direction Lesnar